Good afternoon, everybody. Talking to you today about biodiversity and climate planning in South Cambridgeshire. So, no further ado, I am parish clerk to Gamlingay, which is a rural community to the far west of Cambridgeshire, and been working as a clerk for 21 years at Gamlingay. And I thought it would be good to do a summary about how we approach climate planning and biodiversity within our parish, and it may be of use to other parish councils. So just to let you know, I'm not an ecologist. I have a background in town planning. And I'm a Silker qualified clerk, and I'm one of two clerks that work at Gamlingay Parish. Okay, so what I'm going to cover today in summary form, I'll just do a quick introduction to parish planning and how we do it, and I've divided it into 3 sections. The first section's rather dry and boring. It's the high-level planning stuff that I'm going to cover first, and I'm going to scoot over that fairly quickly. Moving on to low-level planning, sort of Gamlingay Parish Council policies and how we create our policies into actions annually. And the last section that most people are interested in, and indeed which drives and motivates the most of residents and volunteers in Gamlingay, are the actions, events and project work that continue in the parish. So that's the structure of the talk. No further ado, I'll move on to the boring bit. First of all, a bit about Gamlingay. So that's where we are, top left, in between Bedford and Cambridge, and we are the outlier, if you like. We're surrounded to the south and west by central Bedfordshire, to the north Huntingdonshire, and Hertfordshire comes fairly close by, reasonably close by to the south. But yes, we are part of South Cambridgeshire, and that's the shape of our parish. So it's mainly rural. We have one urban centre, main village, and we have some outlying hamlets that surround the central main urban area. So we've got about 4,000 residents. Like I say, we're mainly rural. We have 15 councillors on our parish council. Size of precept, we've got 238,000 this year. We have 5 part-time members of staff. In general terms, we're responsible for land, 2 open cemeteries, some closed cemeteries, community buildings, a library, open spaces. We have a common, Sinks Common, as part of our area. We have Millbridge Brook Meadows, which is like a parkland area, and 2 closed cemeteries. So that's basically what our functions and responsibilities are. We're obviously the burial authority for the area. Okay, quick zoom through the staff. There's 4 of the 5 here. Me, parish clerk, part-time, Leanne, who does all the lovely financy bits and is responsible financial officer for Gamlingay Parish. We are basically job share, and we both work 23 hours a week. We employ a library manager to run the Cambridgeshire Lab in Gamlingay, and Kate Lange, she manages the library on the parish council's behalf, and she's also has a separate job. She's the Eco Hub Centre Manager part-time too. So, and then we have a handyman groundsman, Keith, who's been working for us for a long time. He undertakes grounds maintenance jobs on land owned by the parish council. So in essence, that's what we are. I think it's just good to set the scene of the size of the parish and where we are based. Right, slightly boring section on high-level planning. So obviously the clerk acts on behalf of the parish council, and the responsibilities are to respond to consultations on biodiversity and climate change from higher tier authorities. So do that by consulting with our councillors and village groups when these consultations come out. So this is obviously refers to other planning like local plans and physical land use planning policies, but also you can the same process for biodiversity and climate change. So we'll look at these high-level plans first, and then we'll move on to sort of more local plans that we have been involved with and we continue to be involved with, which is the neighbourhood plan produced in 2022. We also produced a village design guide. Well, we didn't, but the district council did in consultation with the parish council. And we just recently produced a draft biodiversity audit for the parish. So first of all, the higher tier planning relationships, it's really important for parish clerks to be the liaison between the council themselves and these larger bodies that are responsible for biodiversity and climate policies. The things that are affecting us in Cambridgeshire, in particular importance, are national infrastructure projects at the moment. So we've got running quite close to our borders, East-West Rail project. There's also in Cambridgeshire a water scarcity problem. So government has taken over responsibility for planning 2 new reservoirs. They're also arranging for water treatment works in Cambridge to be relocated, and they're obviously building Cambridge South Station. In addition to stuff happening actually within Cambridge itself, East-West Rail potentially are planning on numerous new stations to deliver East-West Rail across Bedfordshire and Cambridgeshire. And the station which has been targeted closest to Gamlingay, which may involve housing development up to 50,000 houses, is at Tempsford, which is located about 3 or 4 miles away from Gamlingay. So not only would there be a station at Tempsford north on the main northern line up to Edinburgh down to St Pancras, but there's also not St Pancras, Euston, King's Cross, goes to King's Cross. There'll also be an east-west from Oxford to Cambridge, and this will also pass through Tempsford. So a new station is going to be built potentially, and the understanding is that that will bring with it large-scale housing development. So quite a large amounts of change within Cambridgeshire. So it's quite important as a parish council be on top of this, understand what the principles are of development, basically looking at how we can try and improve our biodiversity and what the impact is on climate change with those developments in mind. We have a combined authority in Peter and Cambridgeshire that we're part of. So we've got a mayor. They have identified climate change policies and also responsible for large-scale public transport infrastructure projects. So they've produced a climate action plan, and that was informed by work from an independent commission on climate in 2021. That work seems to be coming to the end of its time now, and I'm not quite sure where the combined authority is going after that, but certainly we did provide some comments on the climate action plan, and we're aware of its contents. They are offering sometimes grants available to town and parish councils, so it's good to be in contact with the combined authority, understanding what their priorities are. Then we're moving to Cambridgeshire County Council, obviously a wide remit They came up with their Net Zero Cambridgeshire 2045 document. So we did provide some comments on their processes, mainly frustrated with Cambridgeshire County Council because they're landowners in Gamlingay with a redundant school, which has been redundant for over 7 years, and it's just been left. So quite a lot of frustrations locally. I love the cat's tail, that's great. Yeah, we get very frustrated with Cambridgeshire County Council. We did want to plant some trees on this school site, but tried for the last 5 years and with no joy, unfortunately. So certain levels of frustration with that level of tier of government. Then we move to the Greater Cambridge Partnership. Obviously, these mainly concentrate around the Cambridge city and the environment immediately surrounding, and they've come up with a Greenways character framework policy to try and include active travel to make people cycle and more into the Cambridge city. Again, a little bit more frustrating. We're right on the as an outlier. So quite a lot of the funds for active travel have been going central to Cambridge Centre, and is quite frustrating that the principles aren't applied to the whole of Cambridgeshire. And then South Cambridgeshire District Council, we have a lot to do with very good supportive team. They've also producing an emerging local plan, which has a biodiversity and green spaces section within it as first proposals, and I know they're going out to consultation shortly. But they produced a doubling nature strategy in 2021 as a main outline principle for development. So it's quite good for us to have that as a reference document for us to try and apply when there's any housing development or development proposed in the region, to try and consider what impacts that could make on doubling nature. Last but not least, definitely, is Cambridgeshire Nature Recovery Strategy. Every area in the country understands are producing local nature recovery strategies, and there's the link there for you to look at what's happening in your area. In Cambridgeshire, it's currently out for consultation. So what I do as a clerk is I've sent the information out to councillors, and I also do a draft response. Again, dealing with larger authorities, they don't often understand how councils work. So the frustration comes when there are online surveys that just require writing in and getting to the next question. Well, that doesn't work with a council, because obviously a council has to approve its responses to larger scale consultations collectively. And the job of the clerk is to try to make that happen. So the council's views are recorded and responded to. It's about these level authorities understanding how parish councils work, and also allowing a larger timescale for responses to consultations, which they sometimes do not allow for. Big things happening with Cambridgeshire Nature Recovery Strategy. Cambridgeshire is the most depleted county in the country with regards nature. So it's a big issue for Cambridgeshire how to get our environment to recover. So yeah, at the moment we're preparing some comments to go back to that on that consultation. Okay, so that's the higher tier planning whistle stop. We'll move on next to sort of lower tier planning on land use planning in particular. So we're in lucky position where we have an adopted neighbourhood plan. This was adopted in November 2022, and it took over 7 years to produce this plan, mainly by volunteers from the parish, and numerous different volunteers over that period of time were involved. I was very lucky to have on the team a trained planner who decided that she wanted to take on the actual writing of the plan, which was really helpful. Numerous consultations. We ran equivalent of 2 Regulation 14 consultations to get through to make sure we had the right policies in place. And in the end, we've got 10 policies which identify landscape and urban characteristics of the parish. It identifies views that are important in the parish, how we would like to get about, how we currently get about, and how we'd like to get about in the future, how we can support businesses in the community, and also how to protect and improve links to the open countryside. So we also got a policy adopted within the plan, which allows for all new development, not just housing, to provide contributions to provide new footpath and cycleway links within the parish itself, to make it easier for people to get around on foot and by bike. And that's GAM8 policy, which is an unusual policy. We don't have SIL contributions in South Cambridgeshire, so this was actually allowed by the inspector to go through. So we are now receiving income from Section 106 unilateral undertakings from developers to support those new footpaths and cycleways. Due to the nature of Gamlingay, its radial nature, I did cover it slightly earlier, that's like main village core with some satellites around it. We think it's a very important characteristic of Gamlingay, and we want that to be retained in future. There was a risk that that wasn't going to happen, and those remaining fields were going to get developed. So we have identified that as a particular characteristic, and that was in GAM3. That was supported by the inspector, so that's now in our plan. And you'll see the picture on the front of the presentation, which is a picture of the Lupin field, which is quite a locally recognised site, which is one of those fields between the hamlet and the urban centre of Gamlingay. That particular field has been threatened with development a couple of times now, but with this GAM3 in place, there is some additional policy protection of this small network of patches of fields that protect that particular characteristic of Gamlingay in the future. The other thing we did in the neighbour plan was we wanted to support and protect the SSI Gamlingay wood from encroachment and enhance its setting. The inspector did withdraw. We were going to propose a 200-metre cordon around on the wood, but that was taken out. But he allowed us to keep our maps and plans to show what impact that might have. So we now support woodland activities, forestry enterprises in the plan, but obviously we're a bit more minded to make sure that that wood continues to be protected in perpetuity. So we're now monitoring this plan and its policies every year. And what we aim to do is look at how these planning policies have impacted planning decisions by the district council and at appeal. And then we consider whether or not these policies are still relevant and up to date. And then we're going to potentially review this plan in 2028, 7-8. Okay, so that's the Village Design Guide, something a bit more interesting as well. Managed to get central government funding in 2021, which was really useful. So external consultants were engaged by the district council. They produced a list of features or design characteristics, things that are important to Gamlingay in a draft plan, which was consulted with the village. And that document was an excellent document in which to structure the neighbourhood plan policies on, and we did lean on that design guide to strengthen our potential stance on certain aspects of the neighbourhood plan. So other plans that we've done. So I'm very lucky in Gamlingay to have a retired ecologist and some very active members of the community who feel very strongly about biodiversity. So this gentleman has produced a new draft biodiversity audit for this year, which we are going to consult on a little bit more in the autumn. He is also actively involved in undertaking maintenance tasks, and he's involved with delivering actions to improve open spaces within the parish and works on parish land. He also is interested in improving Millbridge Brook streamside environment, which is part of the St Ivel tributary that runs through to Biggleswade. And also this draft plan has come forward. So it's a really important document, and it's really helped us shape our potential response to the nature recovery strategy. It's out to consultation at the moment. But we hope to take it a bit further by talking to major landowners in the area to see how they can possibly would like to support this biodiversity audit and the actions that are resulting in it in the sort of recommendation section of it. So these volunteers have been doing wonderful things in Gamlingay. We'll talk a bit more about the projects a little later. But what has happened, we have two or three community orchards actually within Gamlingay. Another of the volunteers has actually planted a tiny forest of 500 trees on parish council land. These volunteers groups have come up with a streamside renewal plan that they're currently discussing with the Internal Drainage Authority, IDB Bedfordshire. A new hedge lane group is formed over the last couple of years, and they're going from strength to strength. More volunteers coming forward, having training, and then passing on their expertise to new volunteers. This has started a really good, healthy process, and numerous hedges within the village basically are dealt with on an annual basis. So there's basically a rotary in place where hedges that need to be laid are assessed and then put on a rota for the volunteers to it's wonderful actually to see the result. Sorry, I've got sensitive environmentally friendly lights here and I'm not moving. So a hedge lane group are going from strength to strength, making a big difference within the parish. And then it's lovely to see a new hedge come alive after they've had a go at it in the winter. We've got a scything group, and they're combined with another group.
Yeah.
Another group within South Cambridgeshire, and that's coming together of different volunteers from different parishes is working really well, and we've just had some support from other villages to do some scything, so it's great. Got some river fly and water quality monitoring residents who go out and look at the water quality. That's just started again. We plant occasional wildflowers areas and we review with residents. We've had mixed responses to wildflowers on verges in the past. So we monitor wildflower verges, and we also consider whether or not we should plant elsewhere. And we've also got a wonderful volunteer who does swift monitoring within Gamlingay. So what's next? We're going to be consulting on the biodiversity audit in the autumn. But we are also at the moment looking at the nature recovery strategy and making some comments on that. I've got some other pictures of what the new nature recovery strategy actually does for Gamlingay and the suggested projects that are coming out of that, which are some of which closely tie in with our biodiversity audit, some not less so, but there's definitely work to do there. What we tend to do we're looking at biodiversity net gain and how potentially the things that are coming out of the biodiversity audit might be able to feed into planning applications, and how that information is actually tied in with how planning applications are assessed at South Cambridgeshire. I'm not sure how that interlinking is going to happen currently, but it's definitely work in progress at the moment. How we monitor all this information, what we tend to do is we've got an annual action plan that covers everything that the parish council does. So part of that annual action plan, we have a section on environment. So all our climate and biodiversity actions or proposals for the next financial year we consult on. And that is how we deal with biodiversity and climate change issues and monitoring through our annual general action plan rather than a specific climate change action plan. Okay, low-level planning. So just some examples of what we've done, or what the council has done, or what clerks do within Gamlingay. We produce policies and reports relating to biodiversity. So we've done a biodiversity duty report in 2024. And we looked at our current policies, what we did with all our land use and our buildings, and our current working practices to see whether or not we needed to change anything, and made some recommendations to changing some working practices to make sure we include. And also we looked at our grass cutting contractor policy tender, and how we work with our contractor to see whether or not there's any improvements that we can make there. Other things that we do, we calculate on occasions the parish council's carbon footprint, so I can talk a bit more about that in a little bit more detail. And then, like I've just talked about, the annual action planning and review. Okay, so these are the examples of reports I've written. Biodiversity duty. I've looked at how we calculate the council's carbon footprint. So we first started that in 2019-20 exercise, and then we've now got a comparison 23-4. Hope to do this again next year, because we're making a few extra changes to Old Methodist Chapel, which I'll talk about in a minute. And I'm hoping to see that there'll be some energy usage benefits from that work. We also look on occasions at acquiring and disposing land. The acquisition of land, particularly you'll see from the first page, the loop-in field, we would like as a parish to obviously look to try and preserve that field in perpetuity for the parish, but obviously that's quite complicated to achieve. So yeah, on occasions we look at whether or not we should acquire or dispose land. And also I have done some calculations on energy savings, so upgrading buildings from single glazing up to double glazing or triple glazing, and what in terms of monetary savings that would make for the town or parish council. So I have done that exercise, which is quite useful. Okay, so how to calculate your council's carbon footprint. Whiz through this. If anyone wants any more information on this, happy to oblige. So it's fairly straightforward. So we measure the council's activities on an annual basis. So we look at the energy use in community buildings, the street lights, and in the office. We look at the water use in community buildings and open spaces, the water waste treatment in our community buildings. We tot up all our business travel and commuting, attending meetings and training and home working. We add up any large goods and services that we've purchased over the year, so anything over £500, and we use the distance from the purchase address. I know that is particularly difficult to work out because obviously there are other costs, energy costs, carbon costs associated, but that's basically an easy method in which to use to give us an indication of what the impact is. We also look at contract costs. So, for example, our grass cutting contractors, where they're based from, their transport from their home address to our premises, to our locations, and looking at the fuel used by their mowing equipment, fuel used in actually getting here and back. And we make an estimate on the carbon costs of that. We have an electric maintenance vehicle, so we have the mileage of that vehicle and servicing annually of that vehicle. And we also process waste from public bins on public areas. So the parish council land, the bins that we're responsible for. So we calculate all that. We've got 3 commercial waste bins and dog and litter bins that we're responsible for. So those are the things that go into our carbon footprint, and work has continued on that. Like I say, the last one was 23-24. So in 2019, we created 4.4 tonnes of carbon measured. In 2024, we were, because of our volunteer group producing our wonderful tiny forest of trees, we are carbon negative by 10 tonnes in the parish for that year, which was amazing. Had a look at what we need to do to stay carbon neutral for 2025-6, and the main aspect of that would be to reduce our energy usage or make electricity. So we're concentrating on the old Methodist chapel, which is one of our other community buildings that we own. And we are using some Section 106 resources and some grant monies to make that building more energy efficient, putting a new roof on it and proper roof insulation and installing solar tiles. And we're also putting a battery in it to try and help with the energy usage. So there's quite a few things that we can do, generate more electricity and make community buildings more efficient. So that's what we're concentrating in the next 2 or 3 years. Okay, so we're just going to look forward to working practices. So we review our council policies annually at a special meeting to try not bog down full council with discussions on policies. And we have this meeting, it's called a consultation meeting. And all our policies are put into batches, and individual councillors decide or choose a batch, and they review those policies. And they look at those on an annual basis, and they come back to us, and we just to make sure that we're following these working practices, and all amendments for the year have been included in those final policies. And we also review the working practices of the council at that meeting. Like I say, for our action plan, we review our action plan every summer. So what we do is we come up with some draft action plan proposals, which we then consult the parish with at our village show, which is in September every year. And then we do a formal review at the parish council meeting. And then we consider whether or not we align these new potential actions with the budget estimates and projects for the next financial year. Do this in the winter time, and then we incorporate those actions and publish them in the spring. So that's our process of reviewing our action plan. So this is a bit that's more interesting to most people, what we actually get up to on an annual basis and how we involve residents and get involved. We have very lucky, we have a climate action group in Gamlingay, which is growing apace. And we've got some great volunteers that love to take things on. This is a picture of the village show last year, which we were asking people to vote on some projects which should be the priorities for Gamlingay CAG for the next year. And these also roll into obviously environment section action plan for the parish council. So CAG's very useful to gather information from residents to tell us where we should be spending our time and actions in the following year. Okay, so other community initiatives we've done in Gamlingay in the last 10 to 15 years, there's been so many. I'll just zoom through these. We've created some new allotments. The primary school ran a kitchen garden project, the parish council support through grant. The volunteers of CAG have a 6-monthly repair cafe at the Eco Hub. They recently ran a BioBlitz in June. Today is another day where we're doing the big butterfly count. We've been doing a series of, I think, three sessions with the community where we go out and do some citizen science and try and gather some information about butterflies. The lead project for Gamlingay CAG this year is Gamlingay Wildlife Gardens. We're still trying to gain funding for this project, which basically gets people to tick off things that they will be doing in their garden to help wildlife and biodiversity. If they achieve them in each of the 3 sections, they'll get a little plaque to say that they are supporting wildlife gardening in Gamlingay. This is still a project that we're hoping to run next year in earnest, obviously, because we're coming to the end of the growing season and when people are doing less in their gardens. But we hope to launch that in earnest next spring. And then obviously Climate Action Gamlingay, our group of volunteers that come together every couple of months to talk about things they'd like to get involved with, but it's mainly project or event-based items, which basically give people focus, and it does try and engage residents. Other things that Gamlingay have been up to, we have a food bank. Like I say, I've talked a bit about the scything and haymaking group, the hedge lane group. We're creating the bulk buying service in Gamlingay. That's happening fairly soon. I think one stopped in Sandy, so I think it's going to be starting off in Gamlingay. So that's something that they're looking at to try and reduce plastic waste. Brook restoration plans are moving forward. As I said, work with the IDB is where we're at the moment, and potential permissions that we need to move that forward. We have already received some funding for that project, so we're looking forward to delivering that later this year. And we have got Community Orchards picture there, Community Orchard. That's in Lower Field, and we also have a community orchard in Mulbridge Meadows and at the allotments. Okay, moving on to the Methodist Chapel. I'm probably waffling on far too long. The old Methodist Chapel is basically a 1-room hall adjacent to an old first school built in 1854. Bit of a sorry state. We've managed to get some Section 106 money together to make it a little bit more energy efficient. It's single glazed. You can see sash windows, limited insulation. The energy improvements, like I say, roof insulation, And we were very lucky to secure £7,500 from Gamlingay Community Turbine Limited. So we have a community turbine in Gamlingay that produces electricity, and any profit is put aside for the community to apply for local grants and community groups with an environmental theme. Very lucky that power from wind has ended up supporting and providing 12 solar panels on the Methodist Chapel roof. And this is being installed as we speak. So by September, we should have 12 shiny new solar tiles on the top of the old Methodist Chapel, making electricity and making sure that the small it's used mainly as a preschool, so that building basically will make sure that it's nice and warm for those preschool children in the winter, and it will keep down the electricity costs of running that facility, which is of great news to the parish council, because it's always been a struggle to make sure that we have money to pay the electricity bill, because it is quite expensive to run. So we've also used parish council reserves to do this major project of re-roofing. Okay, so here we are. It's a little bit more of a summary. In July, we've replaced the lights inside with LED lights. We've replaced a new electric consumer unit. We've rewired it and done a fire alarm system. We installed a heat pump, air source heat pump in December. And like I say, we're just moving forward now with the repair and replacement of the roof and the installation of the 12 solar panels. Targets for the future are to replace or repair the single glazed sash windows with double glazed sash windows. But because it's in a conservation area, it's going to cost me about £30,000 to replace those windows. Unfortunately, the local authority won't allow me to put in anything different, so that's what it is. So I've got to try and find some money to pay for them. We need a new ceiling inside the chapel, and it desperately needs redecorating. We're looking to replace some doors and put some wall insulation in, and a new toilet block at some point in the future. So that's the old Methodist Chapel. You may know that I'm here presenting from Gamlingay Eco Hub, which was a completely new refurbished building from an old community centre in 2012, parish council joint project with the community. It's now leased on a long lease to Gamlingay Community Centre Limited, who run the building, and the parish council lease an office from within this building for parish council business, and this is where we hold our meetings. It's a wonderful building, very energy efficient. It collects rainwater and uses it to flush the toilets. It has solar panels. It has solar water heater. It has a ground source heat pump underneath the football pitch, which then keeps heat in an Oscar tank, which then obviously heats the building. It's naturally ventilated and it's designed so it doesn't need any air conditioning during the summer, and it's still quite a pleasant place to work in the summer. Just a fantastic building in which to be in, very highly insulated. Only minor is that you can't get a phone signal because the insulation is so good. But other than that, it's a great place to work. So that's the Eco Hub. As I talked about a little bit more, we've got the Gamlingay Community Wind Turbine in 2014, which was an initiative by Gamlingay residents, gathered together enough funding to put together to create a community turbine and a business, community business. Like I say, it provides excess profits back to the community. So, and as I say, we are benefiting from that. with numerous environmental projects and support from GCTC. So it goes from strength to strength. We have a food bank set up in 2021, and it's run in cooperation between the Baptist Church and the Church of England, church communities and other volunteers, and it's run out of the old Almshouse Chapel, which used to be our offices before we moved to the Eco Hub. Again, energy lights. And that basically supports members in the community who haven't got enough money to pay their food bills, and also it just provides reuse of food that's going out of date from local supermarkets in St Neots, and it hands out off to make sure that that food doesn't go to waste. So really good positive benefit to Gamlingay residents. Long lane allotments. Again, new allotments came forward from land gift or long lease from Merton College, Oxford. It's run by Gamlingay Allotment Growers Association, and they set up after managing the new facility after Gamlingay Parish Council developed this facility. And just a couple of pictures on that. I think there's 56 allotments there. So that's a picture of the allotments. Got some beautiful photographs from a professional photographer, which are in a book, all about how the allotments were constructed. We have a composting woo-woo toilet because it's slightly out of the centre of Gamlingay, so it is too far for people, so they need to provide some kind of facilities. People have built their own sheds. There's a community orchard and wild meadow behind. The whole site was hedged. There's a small car park, and they have a water dip tank system in place, so people can use the water, which is piped to different dip troughs throughout the site. So very good way to conserve water and use water for the allotments. We have a new-ish, everything's new to me, 2015, 10 years ago now, St Mary's Field Cemetery. So our cemetery was running out of space, so we've created a new cemetery on land that was gifted by Merton College. So this is basically a field that potentially could have been lost to housing development, but we managed to secure it for new cemetery, and we have now 2 cemeteries that are open and in use. So these are the things that the volunteers and community have been doing over the next over the last 10 years. I say last 10 years, but it's probably a bit longer than that. So the residents, church groups, Climate Action Gamlingay, we're partnering with Hatley, which is a neighbouring parish as well, for climate action. Villagers from both parishes come together and plan eco events and to improve biodiversity and reduce carbon. We have the Friends of Millbridge Meadows, which is a loosely formed group that meet regularly to undertake maintenance roles within parish council meadows. We also have the Scything and Haymaking group and the Hedge Laying group. So this is explaining why we've been gifted the land. It was part of housing development benefit, and delivered a range of projects to improve the environment, also supported funding to redevelop the Eco Hub for the community centre. So volunteers now help with all these facilities and maintaining these facilities with biodiversity in mind, supported by the parish council. So what's next? It says, effectively, we continue to work with all the volunteers to manage and maintain the land, and consider reviewing working practices as and when volunteers come forward or say, why are you trimming the dogwoods at a different time? You know, we think we can do better, or can you consider changing your working practices? Those are the sorts of things that we have ongoing liaison with. The challenge is creating a medium-term management and maintenance programme which is robust enough to cope with the cyclical change of volunteers as they come and go, and the changing local interest. So that's where we do struggle, and that's the role really of the parish council, to make sure that these areas, these facilities are maintained to a good standard, but also make sure you can try and, as best as possible, make sure you use the volunteer network in your communities to try and make sure people feel involved enough to help you maintain these spaces. So that's really our challenge, I think, as parish councils, as clerks, to make sure that we continue in this role and support residents' views, but trying to create places which are beautiful and are serving those community members. So I think I'm nearly there. Yes, I am. Are there any questions?
Kirstin, that was mind-boggling. If ever there was what's the word I'm looking for? An example of how having the same clerk for the last 21 years can get the place organized and functioning and running. This is magnificent. So I'll leave all the questions to others, except I have one request for you, please, which is, could you and I arrange to chat about examples of the policies and strategies that you laid out on slide 10 and 11? Because I think a lot of people would love to see how you've actually gone about calculating these things, and then how you blasted the parish council into actually doing something about them. So I think everyone will be very interested. So thank you so much. And there are questions, there are a couple of questions that you might want to look at in the chat.
Okay.
In the meantime, let's go with Stuart, please.
Hi, I would just like to say thank you very much. I'm sure everyone is very jealous of what you've achieved, especially your army of volunteers.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to know how you managed to recruit so many talented people. But my main question is, I noticed there's no mention of any gas.
No.
Do you have any gas supply to the village?
We do have gas supplied to the village. In fact, we were having specific issues with our gas through this last winter, where there was a gas leak in a nearby village, and we were getting very low levels of supply, which was causing significant problems. And we had to go to the emergency planning centre to make sure that those residents who were vulnerable were making sure that they still had enough heating and had enough gas or had the ability to cook. So yes, there is gas in the village, but none of our community buildings are gas. So the Eco Hub runs entirely from electricity. It's an electricity generator. It has now new battery storage facility, so it's even more self-sustaining than it was previously. And we're going the same way with the Methodist Chapel now, trying to bring that building up to use. So yes, there is gas in the village. Quite a lot of residents still use gas. There's a mixture as well, but yes, majority of residential properties. Some are switching over to air source heat pumps now. Like I say, I've got an air source heat pump on the Methodist Chapel. But yeah, yes, there is gas, but people are more worried now that the gas supply has been interrupted, and it was during a very cold snap in February. So issues were with regards to supply and possibly thinking about other ways of heating your building, and that those issues have been raised.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
On to David, please.
Yes. How do you organise volunteers? Because it looks like you've talked about volunteers directly for the parish council, volunteers for a particular policy, volunteers who set up actual community organisation. How does it all happen?
How does it all happen? Well, it doesn't happen through the parish council. It happens by individuals sort of wanting to do things, and trying to work out how they can do it, and coming to the parish council and saying, I want to do this thing, how can I do it? And then those discussions start. It hasn't been easy, and working with volunteers is never easy. It sounds like I've got hundreds of volunteers all doing all these wonderful things in Gamlingay. It's been a struggle, and it will constantly be a struggle, and it will continue to be a struggle because, you know, people might want to do one thing, but they then don't want to commit. So the volunteers that I have that have decided to commit are the ones that will make the effort. They will advertise they're going to do a session at a particular time, and they'll just say to people, come along once. If you don't like it, you don't have to come again. Have some training. Some people, if you want to stay on, if you want to be involved again, let me know, but I'm not going to hassle you. And that sort of arrangement has worked tremendously well. People haven't been scared off by saying, I must commit every Thursday for the rest of my life doing this particular task. With the hedge laying is a particular example where a group has formed because it was the first group of people who got training, formal training. So having the money to have a formal trainer to train those people was the starting point. You lose about a third of people, but the 2/3 perhaps want to come back and demonstrate their skills they've learnt the next year. And then you invite people a lot more, advertise that, and you invite more people along. And then that means that those other people get trained. They may not come back, but they might do. And if you do that process sort of about 2 or 3 times, you end up getting a core group together that people really enjoy doing that on an annual basis. And that's what's happened with the hedge layers. I can't hold my hand up and say that I did that because I tried to get a hedge laying group off the ground and I failed. But it involved somebody, an individual from the community doing it themselves, being supported by the parish council, that actually made that happen. And it's tough, but you do need resilient members of the community who really, really are very passionate about something and are willing to give it a go.
And is there any, you say they're supported by the parish council, is there some sort of advice for people setting up groups or volunteers, or do you do each case as they come?
Yeah, it's each case as they come. Sometimes it's things like, oh, we need to produce a risk assessment. We don't know what we're doing. Or can you cover us on your insurance for a particular task or a particular event? Or is this, we need £500 of funding. Can you fund us to start the process? Can we get some tools together? Can you do this? Can you do that? And that's where the parish council can help. And it's basically, it depends on the group and what their needs are as to what the parish council can do for them. And if we can't help, we can try and find out who might be able to help. So if it's specialist training they're after, then we can help research whether or not there's any specialist training available. Wildlife Trust, for example, offers fantastic trainers. It's just about different organisations being put in touch with other people to make sure you come up with something that is a sticking point. You're hoping that the parish council can help move that forward.
Right, thank you.
Brilliant. Very impressive. Kirstin Newby, please.
Hi. There are so many questions I would like to ask you because there are so many things that you've covered, which has been brilliant. But first, I want to see if I can help with something. The local nature recovery strategy form that you were battling with in terms of having different boxes and that not working as to facilitate your communication with the councillors. A different hat I wear. I've just joined as a trustee for Natural Cambridgeshire, which is involved in the LNRS. What would help you in terms of a form to provide that feedback? Because I know the consultation's ongoing at the moment. If you had a downloaded version that had all of the questions on it so that you could circulate it and then get those replies and then pop them in online en masse, is that kind of thing useful?
That's it, yes. So there's no problem with the Cambridgeshire consultation, because what you've done online is you've made it possible to download the form, so I can print it out, I can fill it in, and I can send it to councillors, and they can tell me whether or not I'm hitting the mark or not. So that works fine. So there's no issues regards the consultation that's running currently with Natural Cambridgeshire. But the issue is other higher tier authorities very often with their consultations just run an online survey consultation, and it's just not up to the job for parish councils. It's virtually impossible, and they wonder why that our sector doesn't engage. It's because timescales wise, practical question wise, it's not accessible for parish councils as a whole, town councils, to respond to these things. You have to, you have to have a clerk who's willing to spend the hours trying to download or
to work it
somebody out for and they haven't got the time to do it. If you make it easy, you're more likely to get responses from parish and town councils, but quite often these higher tier authorities do not think about it. They think an online form is the answer, and obviously if you're responding as a council, that is no good.
Well, I'm very relieved to hear this particular one is okay. I misunderstood you earlier on, so that's good to know, but it's also useful going forward. May I very quickly ask a question then on one of the list? You mentioned about doing the carbon footprint of the council. Do you have a template or a checklist or something that you use as a starting point for that?
I do, and that template originally came from Cambridgeshire County Council, so I've been quite cruel really in some of my comments, but yes, they did start us on this journey, and it is a template that is produced before from them, and I've adapted it to match our parish council and the things that we actually have within our remit, and what energy we actually use. So yes, I'm happy to share that and talk through with other parish and town councils if it's of use. You can adapt that model to match what you need effectively. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon to Gillian, please.
Hello, and Kirstin, you're so impressive. I can't believe how much Gamlingay has done. You're only about twice the size of Duxford, and I couldn't possibly do a tenth. I'm a parish councillor, but I can't imagine where all this effort comes from. Somebody is doing an awful lot, and it could be you. So well done.
Thank you.
One question I'd like to ask: do you have any protected road verges in the village?
Yes, we do. I'm glad you've asked about that, and just big shout out for you for advertising this session with the with the climate leaders. I do appreciate that you doing that. Yes, so we have protected verges. We got two. I think there's two in Gamlingay. One of which has been completely wrecked through housing development in the last 10 years, and also suffers quite badly from residents mowing it. So there is a question about whether or not that is retained as a protected verge going forward. So we're discussing with the Cambridgeshire County Council about that currently. The other one is quite a long way out of the village, and I'm not aware particularly why it's protected. I think there's a couple of different grasses in there. We have been contacted by Cambridgeshire County Council to review our verges, because we're responsible for some verges on the outer regions of Gamlingay that we cut on the Cambridgeshire County Council's behalf. So what we have said is we're going to do a review next spring of those verges with my retired ecologist, if he's willing to do it, and find out whether or not there is anything else that potentially might be of interest, because I'm sure there probably is. We had a huge amount of heathland. We were the only part of Cambridgeshire which has acidic grassland environment and heathland in Cambridgeshire. So the potential is that some of the verges out on the heath element may still have some kind of flora that might be of interest. So I'm hoping that we can get out and about next spring, but the question came from County Council in the last 3 weeks, so it's too late really to review those verges now. So what we could do as a parish, and what we're hoping to do next spring, is to perhaps get out and about a bit more in the springtime, just go and have a quick look to see if there's anything else that needs perhaps some protection. And
yeah, one of our councillors has been. We've got two. They're both very rural, so we haven't got the problem with neighbours mowing them.
right.
But the contractor that the county employs hasn't mowed them according to the plan it should be. They've been mowed when they shouldn't be. They haven't been mowed when they should be. They haven't been cleared.
Right.
And we've already lost some grasses.
Okay.
We were going to take over the contract. One of my other councillors, Ian Walters, is very big on biodiversity, and he wrote the Duxford Biodiversity Strategy. But he was liaising. There's a new woman, I can't remember her name, at county, and she said, give us one more chance. The problem seems to be with county monitoring their own contractors.
Yes.
They give them the right instructors, but the contractors just do what they like anyway.
Right.
So I think we're going to give them another 6 months and monitor and then take it over if necessary.
Yeah, okay. Well, let us know how you get on with that, actually, because like I say, we're going to probably review the verges next spring, and I think potentially there may be some different practices that come out of that review.
That would be interesting. I'd like to keep in contact. I would very much like copies of, or to be granted access to copies of everything that you have mentioned. You know, if we can use you as a model. Duxford doesn't have a neighbourhood plan. It doesn't have a local plan. We have no plans to write one, which I find quite extraordinary. But apparently the feeling in Duxford Parish Council is that there's no point anyway. So I'd be quite interested on your view of that.
Yeah, I mean, the issue with neighbourhoods plans now is unfortunately the supporting grants that are available from central government have now been removed. So it makes any community who hasn't got a neighbourhood plan who wants to do one even more difficult than it was before, which is such a shame and very short-sighted, unfortunately. But it's about communities and parishes taking responsibility for their own environment, and if that involves getting involved with the land use policies, which is what a neighbourhood plan does, then it's a method by which you can. So, and obviously with the increasing responsibilities on biodiversity, there's in an even bigger area where you can possibly have an impact through a neighbourhood plan. So yeah, I can't say that it's an easy process. 7 years is a long time. So I wouldn't say that I would recommend it at the moment because there's no funding. But certainly, I think it's the way forward, but the money has to be there to support local communities to do them.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very, very much.
No problem.
Okay, and on please to Judith.
Hello. It's delightful to hear that some councils really do work. So thank you for that. I used to live in Henlow, so it's so glad to hear about Gamlingay. I have a question about, did you say you've got community orchards?
Yes, yes.
And what do you do with the fruit thereof?
Okay, so you'll be able to watch back my presentation. I won't share my screen again, but on one of the pages is a picture of the food bank.
Uh-huh.
And there's a picture of the apples that were pictured in the community orchard at the food bank. So yes, they are they're distributed via the food bank, or they're left outside the food bank, in fact, for people to help themselves. We did give some apples when we have a big crop to neighbouring towns. Some of them do make cider, and also they've been gifted to other food banks in the local area. We haven't had, well, we did have a reasonable crop, but the delightful children of Gamlingay have had a bit of an apple fight, unfortunately, in the last week or so. So we have less than perhaps we should have had this year, but that's all part of having a community orchard, I suppose.
I just wanted to share something that comes from Germany, from my German friend, who said that the council grows every tree, almost every tree, and in the town actually is some kind of a fruit tree. And in the autumn, they come around and you can bid for a tree for
Oh.
€1 or something like that. Helmut always gets 2 or 3, and he makes cider. I think the community has a fruit dryer. So
Right.
you can borrow that for drying. So he does several things, with schnapps, of course, being one of them. So it's just a suggestion if you wanted to do that.
Yeah, well, it's certainly, but yeah, again, so if I had your husband in my parish, you know that's what I'm asking him to do for me.
That's right. Yes,
Well-
it's a long way from Germany. Anyway, I thought it was such a good idea. I do tell people about it.
Yes, lovely, thank you.
Thank you.
One last question for me, Kirstin, before we move on to David, which is trying to catch people before they leave. I promised that I would ask people if they would like a specific topic gone into in more detail by you, because there was so much there and I thought it was brilliant. But if people wanted to have another session with you, would they please let us know in the chat?
Yeah,
Just
fine.
and
Yes.
particularly the subject they'd like to discuss. Because I think because it's been a magical session. Thank you. And
Thank you very much.
back to David.
Yes. Don't need an answer right now, but like Graham, I'd like to find out more about how you manage policies and so on, because we are actually doing a neighborhood plan right now.
Okay.
We've put aside a maximum of 18,000 of our £63,000 SIL money, because we can no longer get that much money from central government as a deprived area.
Yeah.
And it looks like we don't quite have it organized well, because our clerk is insisting every single step we want has to go to the next parish council meeting to be approved. And we probably need a better system, something like the things you were talking about.
Okay, yeah, so I had a terms of reference for the neighbourhood plan group, and they basically had representatives from the parish council on that group. And then obviously they had responsibilities passed down to them. Me as clerk was secretary to the neighbourhood plan group. So effectively, I was able to take minutes and notes of the meetings and relay information to the parish council as and when it was necessary. So it was a communication role. And also because of my background in town planning, I'm also been able to support the group.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it worked. Obviously, I had to be allotted some extra hours in my job to do that, and the parish council supported me in that. So that's how we were structured, if you like, to run the neighbourhood plan. But it's like you say, the majority of it does fall on to volunteers, and there's a lot for them to cope with. But communication between the group and the parish council is quite key. And I took on that role and responsibility. So that's how it worked for Gamlingay.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Well, Kirstin, you've done a wonderful job of overrunning by a huge amount, but it's been tremendous, a very popular and a very talented presentation. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks for listening, everybody.
and the penalty for this is you're bound to be asked again. So congratulations. I would cheerfully announce what we're going to discuss next week if I had the slightest idea, but I don't yet. So it'll all be a great surprise, and all the fun is in the anticipation, isn't it? So thank you all so much. I hope it was useful, and we'll publish the results and all of Kirstin's documents for the world to see in the future. I think you're going to be our go-to site for everything. So thank you so much, Kirstin. Brilliantly. Thank you all for showing up. Appreciate your time, and see you next time. Bye-bye.